Thank you, Mr. President, for the incredible honour of speaking here this evening. I'm going to start by saying something quite unusual. I wish the opposition could win tonight. I wish the opposition could win because that would mean that we were on track for net zero by 2035. That would mean that we cared about climate change. That would mean that we have faith in this government to deliver. I wish that was the case, but the simple truth is that it is not. Faith requires evidence, faith requires hope, and our government's net zero policy provides neither of these. We have buried our heads in the sand over climate change for generations. The first COP report came out in 1990, and 33 years later, 2023 was a world record year for emissions. Report after report is released, conference after conference takes place, and what are we left with? Pretty pictures and empty promises. We are left with performative activism and politicians who will pay lip service to the climate movement whilst it is popular and ignore the problem once we stop watching their every move. We are left with a system that serves those who pollute, where big oil pulls the strings behind the scene to secure their interests. Climate change is not some distant storm that we can prepare for. It is here and it is now, and we are not doing enough. Now, before I begin my main arguments, the honour falls on me to introduce the opposition this evening. So, first you'll be hearing from Lewis Fisher, our beloved Scouse Secretary. Now, luckily, Lewis, as an Everton supporter, is quite used to being on the losing side, so I'm sure he's in a very happy place this evening. Then you'll be hearing from Chris Skidmore, who, as we know, likes to also back the losing side, since he swapped his support from Rishi Sunak to Liz Truss for Conservative leader. Next, you'll be hearing from Philip Dunn, who, as alumni of Eton, as somebody who was part of the Bullingdon Club and studied PP at Oxford, I'm sure feels right at home in this chamber, although as a Conservative MP, usually in the other side of the bench. Finally, you'll be hearing from Sarp Ozdemir, our Director of Media. Despite ascending St Hilda's, Sarp is known for appreciating the finer things in life. So he does his bit for net zero by exclusively shopping at Waitrose or Tesco's Finest. He'll tell you that his organic venison has a very low carbon footprint. Mr. President, these are your guests and they are most welcome. So, to begin, what would it mean to achieve net zero? Achieving net zero would mean that any CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions are balanced out by removal of the same amount from the atmosphere. The UK currently plans to be net zero by 2050, with emissions reduced 78% from 1990 levels by 2035. To Britain's credit, the target is unique in that it does not allow for the offsetting of British emissions in other countries and covers all greenhouse gas emissions, not just carbon dioxide. However, firstly, this ambitious programme, even if it were to be achieved, does not result in net zero by 2035. But the real issue is that the government is failing to take their commitments seriously. Only 28% of emissions are covered by confirmed policy, 59% are covered by potential policy, and 13% of emissions are simply not covered at all. This is completely unacceptable. The IPCC, the scientific body that advises countries on climate change, told us in 2020 how much carbon we could emit to give us a 50% chance of sticking below 1.5 degrees of warming. Between 2020 and 2023, we emitted half of this in just 3 years. Well before 2030, when the next IPCC report is due to come out, we will have used up the rest of this safety net, and the chances of keeping warming below 1.5 degrees will fall rapidly. To me, this seems like a shocking statistic. And yet to our government, this is clearly not a major issue. They have just approved the continuation of drilling for oil in the North Sea, despite a letter from over 700 scientists advising that North Sea drilling stops now. Big oil is clearly too important to be stopped, and our planet is being sacrificed, no thank you, on the altar of economics. Here's another example of how the government fails to commit to their net zero policy on the ground. My local airport in Bristol has promised to be carbon neutral by 2035, but they neglect to mention that this is not including flights. I tried to come up with a good metaphor to describe how ridiculous this was, but it is such a meaningless statement designed to deliberately mislead the public that there is just no corresponding example. And this sums up the entire government strategy. They will do enough to convince the public that they are taking action and we are doing our bit to tackle the issue, when this couldn't be further from the truth. Our system is designed to emit. Our economic system, our transport system, our energy system, it is all designed around the emission of carbon. And to change this will require investment and dedication on such a large scale that the government is unwilling to commit. They fear that such drastic measures will be unpopular with voters, and they may be right. And that's why I have no faith that net zero is achievable by 2035. Because the uncomfortable truth is that we are the problem. We eat raspberries from Kenya and fly to the Caribbean. We heat our homes to 23 degrees and drive our cars to the local shops. We are accustomed to a certain way of life, but it's a way of life that is ultimately destroying our planet. There's no need for everyone to return to a Stone Age lifestyle. I'm not asking you to abandon your house or never travel again. But we must accept that in order to tackle the climate crisis, something has to change. We cannot have our cake and eat it, no matter how much politicians will stand up here and promise you that that is the case. Climate change is a problem that is fundamentally caused by the West. Britain kick-started the Industrial Revolution, and with it, the mass burning of fossil fuels that defined the 20th century. All of these emissions over the past 150 years haven't suddenly disappeared. They are fueling the hurricanes, the droughts, and the floods that we see today. The government wants to tell you that we are one of the smaller emitters in the world today, but this ignores the historic part we played in creating this crisis. It also ignores the fact that we are one of the highest per-person emitters in the world. And this is where the power of people comes in. It is all too easy to feel helpless in the face of climate change, to feel like you are a small cog in a huge machine and you will never have an impact. I won't lie to you, to a certain extent, this is true. But small changes add up. Look at plastic bags. 5 years ago, every supermarket handed them out for free. Now, because of people like you and me, things are changing. We create the markets. We are the voters. We are the people. And that gives us far more power than we realize. If everyone in this country turned around tomorrow and acted on their promise to care about climate change, if we all voted for politicians who will take action, then the people at the top would simply have to listen. We need leadership from the government, and their failure to prioritise long-term goals in favour of short-term policies that will boost their electoral prospects is truly appalling. The liberal Western order worked well for many years, powered by economic growth, floating on a wave of oil and cocooned in short-term goals. But this worship of the economy and domination of big business is not enough to solve an existential problem like climate change. We need to start looking at the bigger picture and start remembering that the government is there to serve us, not the other way round. Climate change may be here and now, but so are we. I may not have faith in the attainability of any form of net zero by 2035, but I have faith in you. I have faith in me, and I have faith in us. Whether we achieve this target or not, we have an absolute responsibility to millions, billions of people around the world, to future generations, and to ourselves to fight this crisis with everything we have. Do not feel hopeless, no thank you, at the enormity of the task. Feel inspired. You have the chance to make a difference in a way that few people ever will again. Rise to the challenge. Restore our faith and restore our planet. People sometimes ask why I care so much about the issue of climate change, and so I'd like to leave you with a quote from Guardians of the Galaxy. When asked, why would you want to save the Earth? The answer is, because I'm one of the idiots who lives on it. Thank you very much.